Thanks so much for the opportunity to address this critical topic alongside brilliant experts and human rights defenders from other countries across the Mediterranean. So I represent EDRI, European Digital Rights, which is a network of 50 organizations, academics, and experts that defend digital rights across Europe. So first, it is crucial to recognize, and that has been said by several people before me, that mass surveillance has become a global phenomenon that also has clear manifestations and increasing manifestations in Europe. In Europe, actually, the normalization of mass surveillance is often justified under the banner of national security. And however, we have seen for years how it directly and indirectly impacts the fundamental rights of individuals and collectives throughout the continent. One considerable example of that is the rise of CCTV cameras that Mara mentioned also in the case of Palestine, and facial recognition systems across public spaces. Through the Reclaim Your Face campaign, EDRI led efforts to challenge these systems. During the negotiations of the AI Act, and the minister has left, so we called for a ban on biometric mass surveillance because it allows for constant tracking, not only in public spaces, but in every aspect of public life, turning streets, parks, and workplaces into potential surveillance hotspots. Yet our demands went mostly unheard because this ban that indeed happened was accompanied by a number of exceptions. There's always an exception, and there's always a national security exception when it comes to Europe. And we continue to face growing resistance and surveillance. Technology proliferates on the narratives of safety, security, and the medium of techno-solutionism. So technology is going to solve all of our problems, right? Whether private or public. Another urgent issue is European states' growing interest in compromising encrypted communications. Today, we see that with the pretext of protecting children with what we call chat control. Chat control refers to the EU's proposed regulation to combat CSAM, child sexual abuse material. I know it sounds very serious, it is, but the proposal calls for more stringent monitoring and potential scanning of private communications, and this will require scanning personal messages and will for sure undermine end-to-end encryption. Encryption is important, right? I guess we all can all agree on that. Apparently, European institutions do not believe encryption is so important. One of EDRI's core tenets, and one of the tenets of any digital rights defender, is that encryption and end-to-end encryption is essential for democracy because it protects individuals' freedoms of expression and privacy, enabling secure communication without fear of surveillance or censorship. This safeguard is crucial for journalists, politicians, activists, and also ordinary citizens, as it allows them to share information, organize, and hold power to account. And this is one of the tenets of European democracy. Weakening encryption creates vulnerabilities not only for these groups, but for society at large. This is not just about encryption, though. It is also about spyware, that was already mentioned, which is specifically designed to bypass the protection offered by encryption. That's why European states have resorted to spyware under the justification of national security and want to defend them doing so. A relevant example is, of course, Catalan Gate, which some of you know very well, unfortunately. This scandal highlights the risk posed by unchecked surveillance tools. When spyware is used against political figures, or again, against any normal citizen, any human rights defender, any journalist, it directly undermines the democratic process, chilling free expression and threatening political pluralism. Surveillance tools must never be weaponized to intimidate or suppress voices within democratic societies. EDRI's stance, and again, this is the voice of many digital rights defenders, is that these technologies should be outright banned, given that they don't respect the fundamental principles of necessity and proportionality. And we also need to take into account that most of these power mechanisms have been tested on Palestinians, on Western Sahrawis, on many, many human rights defenders throughout the world, on top of it all. One of the most troubling aspects of mass surveillance nowadays is that it disproportionately impacts already marginalized groups. The narrative around surveillance technology, whether framed as smart, predictive, or proactive, obscures the reality that these systems often entrench existing biases. Predictive policing, for example, rarely addresses root causes of crime, but instead stigmatizes specific groups based on one-sided and discriminatory historical data. This is notably the example of migrants. EDRI also has a campaign that is called Protect, Not Surveil, and the name says it all. It advocates for policies that actually protect the people rather than police the people, and actually vulnerable populations that are already on the move. We didn't have much success with this case either, because the AI Act also created an exception for migration management, border control, and asylum, just as it did with national security. I cannot stress enough how all of these AI-driven systems to monitor, predict, or even restrict the movement of migrants crosses a moral line and risks eroding fundamental rights. Automated profiling and risk assessment systems used in border management often rely on inaccurate or biased data and make harmful assumptions about individuals based on their origins. This form of technological enforcement criminalizes people simply for seeking refuge and compounds the discrimination that they already face systematically. How much do I have left? 1 minute, yeah. So last but not least, I want to also put emphasis on the intersection between commercial and state surveillance, because it also plays a significant role in amplifying the reach and impact of these surveillance practices. Data gathered by private companies. Of course, we are going to all think automatically of big tech companies, but it's also about dozens of other kinds of companies that gather location tracking, facial recognition, and even personal messages that we use for communicating every day. Is often provided to state authorities, either through direct partnerships or indirectly through data sharing practices. And this lays the groundwork for surveillance capitalism, which creates individuals that are treated as data subjects, continuously monitor and analyze, again, each and any one of us, with little oversight and much less redress, the redress you were mentioning. Citizens' data collected for supposedly benign commercial purposes is weaponized when it reaches the hands of state authorities, enabling a seamless and troubling blend of state and commercial power over our private lives. This is not about commercial surveillance, but just to mention, and we've seen that with Elon Musk's recent actions, all of this data that is not collected, but it's stolen from us, can also fall into the wrong hands, not just state authorities, but also people representing authoritarian democracies. Last but not least, as lawmakers, I urge you, and are hand in hand with all the brilliant speakers, to prioritize the protection of human rights, to push back against the normalization of mass surveillance, and to ensure that both public and private surveillance practices are held to the highest standards of transparency, oversight, and accountability, and to the three criteria set by the Court of Justice of the European Union and also mentioned by the President of Parliament: legality, necessity, and proportionality. That's the only way to defend human rights.